Yo guys, what's up? It's WarSpirit. Today I wanted to do a little video talking about the overtime mechanic in Overwatch, why it's not that great, and possible solutions to prevent it happening so often and being so drawn out at higher levels of play. Overtime is a feature that triggers when the match timer reaches 0 but the attacking team is still contesting the objective. As long as someone on the attacking side keeps touching the objective within a 10-second safety interval, then the overtime will continue. It is the job of the defense to prevent the attacking team touching the objective for those 10 seconds to end the overtime. But it can also end up being abused by the defensive side. The final checkpoint for a lot of maps in Overwatch is very close to the defending team's respawn room, which means it's not uncommon for defenders to draw out overtime for great lengths of time with fast moving heroes like divas and tracers. In fact, oftentimes they can even take back the point minutes into the overtime timer. This itself ends up being a bigger problem than just overtime, as it can happen when there's still plenty of time on the clock. So first, I'll just focus on the overtime scenarios. First off, what would happen if overtime was simply deleted from the game? Well, the attacking side would receive a massive nerf, that's for sure. Attacking side nerf, you say? Isn't that exactly what the game needs right now, when it's pretty clear that the attacking side is usually winning matches? With overtime gone, it would mean if you have 6 guys alive and pushing the payload after team wiping the defenders, and then you run out of time, the game would simply end. You ran out of time, you lose. In the case of King of the Hill, the ticker would never actually stop at 99% if the point was contested. It would just go straight up to 100. Whichever team had the hold would just keep ticking up to 100% and the game would end immediately. And in the case of 2-point capture maps, even if you gain control of the point with seconds to spare, if the white 3-point circle didn't complete its capture cycle before the timer ended, you would lose as well. It's a solution, but it's a messy one, and it would probably feel pretty unfair and unrewarding for the attacking side. Here's the first interesting solution. Give each team a set amount of overtime allowed, a time bank of say 30 seconds per map. What this means is, as long as the team can touch the objective as the match timer is ending, they'll be granted an extra 30 seconds to work with. This 30 seconds will count down until it ends, at which point the game will be over, no matter how many attackers are still contesting the point. Otherwise, if the attacking side caps a checkpoint within those 30 seconds, then they'll get to continue playing, and however much overtime they had left is what they get to work with if they go into overtime again on a later checkpoint in the same map. This overtime bank could easily be highlighted on the HUD underneath the score at the top. It's also important to note that only the attacking side's time bank would get used up in each match. So if we were to look at King of the Hill maps, where the attacking side rotates often throughout each round, then each team would have to have its own individual 30-second time bank at the top, which they could abuse to get some last-second assaults on the enemy's defense. In this system, I'd probably say that the time bank is restored to full after each round in the new competitive formats for 2-point capture maps and for the King of the Hill rounds. In this solution, it's very important for attackers to understand that once the 30-second overtime is triggered, there's no stopping it, and if they use it all on capturing the first checkpoint, then they'd end up in the same situation as if overtime was just deleted from the game. It's a big buff for attacking teams who instantly cap on first points, but also a big buff for final point defenders. That's 2 buffs that aren't really necessary in Overwatch right now, but it might still be worth it simply to find that better overtime system. I think King of the Hill is one of the more interesting modes to talk about when it comes to overtime, just because of how controversial it has been in competitive play, with oftentimes 5 tracers and 1 Lucio coming out for the overtime section of the round. And honestly, sometimes it feels like overtime is the only part of the match that really matters. In King of the Hill, the rest of the match is the same old back and forth ultimate control gameplay until we hit stalling time. Competitive play is actually counteracting this by introducing 1 hero limit, so teams can't spam tracers anymore to draw out overtime for longer than the actual normal part of the round. But it doesn't mean that teams can't take a diva, a Winston and a tracer to still try and get the same effect and get the most out of that overtime juice. If overtime was removed, would we still need hero limits? I mean, it sure would lessen the impact of hero spamming in overtime, and if they only had that 30-second time bank to work with, then they better damn sure make a decent team comp that can actually capture a point in 30 seconds, and 5 Tracers would never be able to achieve something like that. The hero limits have arisen for a lot of other reasons as well, making the game more spectator friendly, preventing completely unpredictable and undefendable first point attacks and more. In King of the Hill, actually I would be happy if the ticker did go straight from 99% to 100% with no overtime at all. Why not? Maybe overtime is fun the first time it happens for you, and maybe you have had some really nice, crazy, intense overtimes that were super rewarding when you came out on top in the end, but it kind of does get a point where it just becomes cancerous. If the ticker was to go straight to 100%, I think the tick rate of King of the Hill would actually need to be halved so that the games lasted a little longer, just because a lot of games do happen where one team goes all the way to 99% before the other team ever does get that chance to take it back. Doubling the tick time and removing the overtime, you'll end up with King of the Hill games lasting probably the same length of time without that frustrating end game section. With the nerfs to overtime, a nerf to final point defenses would have to come as well. Even now, I'd say that the final point nerf has to come, and it might just be due to some poor map balance. Some of the most notable stall points are King's Row, Watchpoint Gibraltar, Hanamura, and some maps during the beta were previously balanced by simply moving the spawn points inside the spawn room a bit further back. It's almost equivalent to increasing the respawn timer without the downside of confusing people with different respawn timers per map and per section. Just balancing the spawn locations a little better for some maps would greatly reduce stalling techniques for a lot of those maps. It actually turns out I got this far into the commentary earlier on, and then the new PTR patch happened. So rather than throwing away my video, I'll give you a quick rundown now of what Blizzard is actually going to end up doing now to address overtime issues. So from now on, after 20 seconds of overtime in a match, the overtime fuse will start to burn down more quickly. I'm not sure how quickly this is going to be, but also during overtime, the respawn time of players is increased by 2 seconds. It sounds like it means all players in this situation, in this statement, which I think turns out to be a bigger nerf to the attacking side than the defending side, where it's more necessary to be nerfed. It's good for King of the Hill maps, but it's not so good for the 2-point capture maps. In the end, it might just be enough to give attackers on a final point push time to shut down the whole enemy team before those stalling heroes actually arrive with the increased respawn during overtime. But again, this is only changes to overtime, and it doesn't actually change stalling techniques during the match when the overtime hasn't actually kicked in yet. So I'm happy that at least for overtime this feature is now out in testing on the PTR, possibly coming to the official game as early as next week. But I think there's still more work to be done, so we'll just have to wait and see. And thanks very much for watching this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye.